Good afternoon, everyone. Usha Maheshwari here from Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I welcome you on behalf of the Chamber, all the panel members, all the speakers and delegates for this today's workshop on CSR policy and practice in this current times. So today we have eminent speakers with us, Dr. Meena Galiara, Ms. Gurvinder Parmar, and Ms. Madhulika Gupta. So I would like to say a few words about each speaker. Dr. Meena Galiara, Director, Jasani Center for Social Entrepreneurship and Sustainability Management, NMIMS. She is a board member of Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry and co-chairperson of the CSR Committee of Bombay Chamber. Ms. Gurvinder Parmar is a Technical Director, International Tax and Regulatory, BSR and Associates, LLP. She is a chartered accountant and she has over 20 years of consulting and industry experience. She is currently part of tax and regulatory practice, focusing on CSR, the education and non-profit sector. She is speaker at various public forums. We have Ms. Madhulika Gupta, founder, CEO, Repute Public Affairs and CSR Solutions and member executive council, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Madhulika is a founder and CEO of Repute Public Affairs and CSR Solutions, the boutique consultancy firm specializes in corporate social responsibility, corporate communication, crisis management, events, employee engagement, and related disciplines. Madhulika is a bespoke trainer for for the C-suite media, spokesperson for trainings and crisis communication. And she does various other things, and we all can visit her website, Repute Public Affairs, and lots of details we will be able to find over there. So welcome all three of you, all the three speakers, Dr. Meena, Ms. Gurvinder, and Ms. Madhulika Gupta. Now, a little bit about the Bombay Chamber. Bombay Chamber, I mean, most of the people who are attending today are participating in many of our programs or events. But everybody knows that Bombay Chamber is oldest functioning chamber in the industries for 84 years and will continue to serve many more years to come. So this is the major thing, and we have several thousand members, somewhere around 3,000 plus members who are connected with the chamber, and they are actively participate in all our activities like seminars, workshops. Then we do the advocacy, all the representations sent to the policy makers, authorities, different departments. We write white papers on certain important opinions of the chamber, opinions of the members and the chamber. Then we also conduct conferences on regular basis on different subjects of interest of the members. We have certificate of origin services, and now it's a good news for in this lockdown time for all our members that services are available online. So I would request all the members to take advantage of this online certificate of origin services. So these are the key areas of services of Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Now, I would like to just say 1 or 2 minutes about the program. Today we have 3 speakers and 3 areas to be discussed on. one, Dr. Meena Galiara will present a theme of the seminar today on CSR and different aspects of CSR in relation to the COVID-19. Then Ms. Gurvinder Parmar, legal aspects of CSR, updates in the policy, and what are the new things which are coming in, what cautions we have to take while taking the decisions, what expenditures can be considered as CSR, what is not considered as CSR. So all those guidelines and a lot of scope for clarifying our doubts with Ms. Gurvinder Parmar and Ms. Dr. Galiara will be able to help us in understanding different aspects of CSR policy in with reference to the present times. Then we will have Dr. Ms. Madhulika Gupta, who will be talking about employee engagement, and she'll be sharing her insights into employee engagement. So we will have opportunity of Q&A with all these speakers at various points of time. And I would request all of you to, once the presentation is over, all of you can ask your doubts and clarify your issues. So thank you so much. And over to you, Dr. Meena Galiara, to share your theme presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to take a snapshot in terms of what has happened in the area of CSR. And currently companies are into a dilemma about the legal issues as well as addressing the COVID issues. Okay, so these are the two main pain points which each and every corporate is undergoing, of course, in the midst of whether businesses, whether will they resume the normalcy at the earliest. So when you look at participation of companies in CSR, if you just reflect on, it all started with this whole philosophy that companies can play a huge role in creating the larger social good and can create a good environment for businesses to operate. And in this particular context, in April 2013, we got the section 135 in the New Companies Act with the eligibility criteria, which spans across the sales, net worth, and the profit before tax. It talked about having a CSR committee, formulating a CSR policy and certain rules and regulations for CSR reporting. And we had the draft CSR rules. 2014-15 was the first year where we found 41% of liable companies invested in CSR. And the High Committee report quotes that in 2017-18, the figure which is available in the High Committee report says that 71% of the liable companies invested in CSR. And the quote which I pick up from the committee report is that the committee found that the culture of being responsible to society is being gradually imbibed and by more companies. So this is in terms of the actual investments which is done, and it doesn't talk about the quality of CSR. It talks about the quantification of the financial amount which is invested in CSR. So on page 27 of the report, you will find that the total expenditure from 2014 to 2018 is around 52,208 crores, and the prescribed amount is around 77,222 crores. So 67% was spent, which means roughly around 1/3 was not spent. So that is the gap which the committee has highlighted. And it has given reasons as to why companies are not spending or what is happening. So the report is quite interesting in terms of giving us those logical issues which companies face. The recommendations also, there are more than 21 to 25 recommendations which the committee report has put in, right from the scope of applicability of CSR to whether tax deductions should be done or not, whether there should be third party assessment, whether should we have international organizations like UNICEF, UNDP and all playing a role as implementing partners. How do we treat the unspent CSR amount? Should it be carried forward, or should it be contributing to the national CSR fund? Disclosures, a couple of things. So these recommendations come from the gaps which the committee has highlighted, and in order to strengthen the spirit of section 135, and so that companies will be able to contribute more, and if the compliances are in place, and if these ambiguities which are existing in the law, if those could be addressed. Keeping that in mind, a couple of recommendations which were recommended on 31st July 2019. Okay, the declaration was made in terms of CSR amount to be spent and what should you do about the unspent amount. So this was picked up, and the other one which was picked up was the penalty part, which later on was withdrawn after a lot of chaos that happened in the market. So that was withdrawn, but this has stayed. So prior to the amendment, it was not mandatory to spend the entire amount. So whatever you couldn't spend, you just had to specify the reasons in the annual report for the unspent amount. But post amendment, it was made clear that it is mandatory to spend the entire CSR amount, and they gave us a way out. They said that if you are not able to spend the entire amount within 6 months of the end of the fiscal year, you should transfer this fund to the national CSR fund, which was likely to be formulated, but as of now I don't think the national CSR fund has been formulated. In other words, you contributed to the designated funds which is existing. So if there is, in the absence of national CSR fund, there are certain funds in which you could transfer this amount. But if you have an ongoing project, then whatever unspent amount is there for the financial year, you transfer it to the escrow account within 30 days of the financial year for a period of 3 years. Complete that project, and if you still have some money left, then whatever is left, you have to transfer it to the national funds which are there. But the concern which companies are facing over here, from as earlier as July 31st, 2019, this came up, that it has the effective date of amendment has not yet been notified. So the concern before the companies is whether this amendment, does it still stay, especially now the new rules which have been proposed, and they are likely to be finalized after hearing whatever propositions we had to send. So should companies proactively create an escrow account in the absence of any clarity, or should they merely transfer the money to the designated funds? Okay, in other words, should the money which is unspent for the financial year 2019-20 to avoid all the problems, should we transfer it to the PM CARE fund or to any other national fund which is recognized under the law? So these are the concerns which as of now the companies are facing, and Gurvinder will address some of these questions. So even prior to COVID, okay, these concerns were remaining and companies would like to have a clarity on this. In March, suddenly we got this proposed rules from MCA, and these proposed rules also are based on the high level committee report. Most of them are taken from the committee report, and which is giving us an indication on the revised CSR definition, the type of policy that the companies will have to write, the involvement of international organization. The rules say that companies can involve international organization. The proposed rules talk about implementing partners, and there the concern is that the mention of trust and societies is not existing, but only Section 8 companies is there. Certification from CFO that the money utilized for CSR has been in the right manner, but who is going to prepare the template for the CFO statement, or where is the template going to come from? So there is ambiguity over there. The unspent CSR amount, the treatment which is proposed, so companies are not very comfortable with the type of propositions which have been made in the rules, and impact assessment. So whether impact assessment has to be done by the third party, then this third party, what should be the qualifications of the third party? Should it be after 3 years, or should it be on the quantum of spend rather than just talking about 3 years? So these are some of the some of the rules, okay, which have been placed before the companies and the NGOs to debate and go back to the MCA with their solutions. And so in this context, Bombay Chambers extended the draft to all its members, and people have contributed to the draft, and the suggestions have been sent to the MCA. Basically, suggestions proposed by the MCA are on clarification of implementing partners, engaging international NGOs, and if you're going to engage international NGOs, what is the type of engagement should be there? So that is a suggestion which has been given. Percentage of CSR amount to be spent on less than 25% of employees, more clarity that is required. Impact assessment, qualifications of companies which would conduct impact assessment or NGOs which would conduct impact assessment. A clarification is sorted on that, and it has been proposed as to which type of organizations can take up impact assessment. CSR committee functions, because a lot of discussion in the proposed rules about committee functions. So there are certain issues which have been raised in the recommendations which have been made by Bombay Chambers. Treatment of unspent amount, overspent amount on CSR, that if I spend more than 2% this year, will there be an adjustment for the next consequential year? So these are some of the things which Gurvinder will highlight when she's talking, because your compassion towards the society is first to be addressed by the legal compliances, and that is where she will come in. When we are looking at the whole issue between compliance and COVID-19, what is the way forward? Because for the next 2-3 years, we will have to invest in rehabilitation program. Okay, the relief activities are going on, and they will continue for a few more months. But post that, the reconstruction and rehabilitation work will be there. And so the entire fight against COVID-19 and utilizing CSR as a strategy is going to be extremely crucial in the entire game that we are playing. So even before the Ministry of Corporate Affairs decided to bring COVID-19 as a disaster to be covered under CSR, we have seen the corporate benevolence which was in place. So corporates did not wait for MCA to declare this investment in COVID-19 as a CSR activity. Companies have come forward. They have provided financial, technical, medical, infrastructural support. A couple of companies, a few names I have put in over here, but there are many more who tried to do their best foot forward in order to help the government to address the entire scenario. So the declaration has come in only as late as March 23rd, okay, which is there that the spending of CSR funds for COVID-19 is eligible for CSR activity because this is a disaster. And so companies can take up CSR activities in the areas of healthcare, including preventive healthcare, sanitation, disaster management. This was the Twitter which I have copy pasted it over here by Nirmala Sitharaman, urging companies to spend on these type of activities. And further in her next tweet, she also wrote about that CSR funds could also be invested in rehabilitation and reconstruction activities. In other words, helping the migrant workers, looking at the new skills which are to be developed. And so this is the opportune time for corporations to examine and invest money basically in the foremost category, that is the public healthcare systems in the country, because there will be a visible impact on whatever investment has been made in over here. So we conducted at NMIMS a study with a sample size of 650. This was an online study to understand what is the society's expectation from business in addressing COVID-19. And our results is presenting a few results over here. We have aligned it with the Sustainable Development Goals, and we find that SDGs related to achieving health targets or food security or decent work are heavily going to be impacted. And because our Schedule 7 is aligned to the SDGs, companies will have to map that whatever work that they have done in these SDGs is likely to be impacted in terms of people may have lost jobs. Okay, you have trained people, but people may have lost jobs. So it again brings you back to square one. 80% of the respondents felt should be used for healthcare sector because COVID or no COVID, our healthcare is an extremely fragile system which is there. Community hygiene, medical research, employment opportunities, because new type of supply chain systems will have to be designed now. And in these new type of supply chain systems, a lot of work will have to be done in the area of infrastructure and skill development. And we conclude our research with saying that to ensure economic environment, we require a social sustainability which is in place. So appropriate economic policies, fiscal stimulus, investments in healthcare, social protection should be there. So the package which has come in, okay, from the center to revive the MSMEs is not enough, because legal reforms for the MSMEs are extremely important, as simple as GST. You know, can you exempt them from paying GST for another 3 years, 5 years? Okay, couple of other things are there which could be considered, which goes little beyond our CSR discussion. So it's time for Indian corporates to step up, and if we look at it as an opportunity, that as the economic activity will gradually resume, companies should try to use this crisis, okay, as an opportunity to expand their CSR footprint. Smaller companies can give this designated funds, okay, I mean their CSR amount to PM Care or whatever funds that they want to pay in for. But there can be a hybrid approach which can be adopted by large companies. So part of funds may be considered to be given for your PM Care fund or any other fund that has been, you know, legally approved for CSR spend. But companies may consider strengthening their own CSR teams, because you'll have to review and revise their capacities which are there, especially use of technology. Okay, Mr. Srirangan just spoke about it. So you may have to rebuild the skill sets of your own team, the NGOs with whom you work, the district administration, and the whole emphasis on local areas becomes more crucial, because people have gone back to their hometowns. And whether these could be strengthened wherever the company's operations are there, whether these local areas could be strengthened, and in that way it will become a very effective approach. To conclude the entire theme, and before I hand it over to Gurvinder, companies will have to map the field requirements, okay, especially large companies. There is no way out that the field requirements may not be considered. It's very important. So to create a social impact, some innovations could be thought in terms of use of technology, especially in red zones. Okay, in green zones the schools are likely to start, but even when the schools start, can we consider in terms of getting into online education systems? Can investments be made into those infrastructure? Okay, training of teachers through teaching through online. So part of the classes can be offline and part of the classes can be online. So the way in which you design educational projects may undergo a change. Okay, the way in which healthcare is administered, so more of telemedicine units could be considered using technological things which are there. Waste management systems, because community sanitation is extremely important. So the circular economy, okay, those types of investments in CSR could be considered over here, because it's extremely important. And healthcare, skill development, agriculture, developing aggregator models for helping farmers. So there has to be some things which are thought out of the box, but at the same time aligning it with your Schedule 7 or whatever are the propositions which are made. So the Schedule 7 has been amended also to incorporate research investments in healthcare to the designated state institutions which are there. So for your further research in healthcare, science, technology, those things could be considered to understand what are the type of solutions that one can come along with. uh, it is important to redraft your CSR policy, because a lot many changes are seen in the rules which have come out or have been given by the MCA. So your CSR policy indicators, the major indicators, has to give a rationale. Your governance structure in terms of how have you selected the committee members, who are the committee members, how many times they are going to meet in a year, is there any job description for the committee, CSR committee members who are there, is their performance going to be appraised of the CSR committee members, how are you going to plan your CSR activities, what is the strategy that you're planning to use, how will you select your implementing partners, what is the eligibility criteria. Monitoring tools, just a line that we will monitor every quarter is not enough, but how are you going to monitor, how are you going to evaluate, what tools will you be using. Those things are important to be specified in the CSR policy now. The treatment of any unspent amount, disclosures that you're likely to make, the validity period of the policy, because every policy has a validity period of 3 years, 2 years. So companies will have to specify, because the more you specify in your CSR policy, it will help you at a later date in case if there is any legal dispute or any other dispute, because you can always go back to your policy and say, this is how we did it. And so the policy has to be designed in such a way which will take care of your legal compliance and also create shared value in the entire thing. So it has to benefit the society as well as the investment which the companies are making to create a favorable environment in which businesses can operate. Okay, so this is what I had to say. And I would request Gurvinder to take over, because there are these legal things which are extremely important, COVID or no COVID. The legal part does play a very, very important role. So thank you very much. So Usha, do you propose the questions now or at a later date? I mean, later time? Yeah, Usha, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Dr. Meena Galiara. I request Ms. Gurvinder to join us with your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Meena, and thank you, Usha. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm just
can you just put it on slideshow?
Yeah, I'm just doing that. Okay, I think it's now in slideshow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thanks so much for setting the context. I think you've, Dr. Meena, you made my quite easy. You've covered a lot of very important, legal aspects or aspects from a CSR law perspective. So interestingly, every time that this session is organized, by BCCI, I always, before the session, we sort of often debate and think, okay, what is it that we want to talk about? Because really, when you look at the CSR law, or, how much space it takes in the Companies Act, 2 sections, 1 schedule, a set of rules. But, we are now in the 6th year. And interestingly, there's just been so many developments that one sees on a regular basis. So even now, when I look back, when I presented last in August, to now, there have been quite a few significant amendments, or so to say proposed amendments, which have been brought in the law. So really, I mean, we continue to see that so much is evolving. And now, of course, we are clearly in a new normal. COVID is not something which anybody expected or was prepared for. But at the same time, what really sort of comes to the fore is that the role of CSR, the role of sustainable actions on the part of companies, the role of the civil society and the NPO sector is reinforced. On a daily basis, you see articles where there is a where there is a call, for companies to come forward. And like Dr. Meena said, every company has, of course, even on their own, sort of pulled up their socks and to see what is it that they can do, whether it's for their own stakeholders, for their other CSR beneficiaries. So clearly there is a lot that one needs to be prepared for, but at the same time, there are certain aspects from a legal perspective which tend to be sort of not so clear. Like for instance, Dr. Meena mentioned about the escrow accounts. I'll get a little bit more in detail on where we really are legally on Companies Act Section 135, Schedule 7. So what I'm going to try and sort of cover is two key amendments, which is one is the Companies Amendment Act 2019, and then there is a more recent Companies Amendment Bill of 2020. So the Companies Act came out in 2013, and this was really a change after 19. You had a Companies Act 1956, so after more than 40 years, there was a change. So clearly, there are a lot many changes which are still required, or one feels in need that okay, this particular change is not overall well suited. So it's not just the CSR which is going through amendments. There are a whole lot of other provisions which keep changes, and that's how the government keeps bringing in the various relevant amendments. We are going to talk about the proposed amendments to CSR rules, which Dr. Meena discussed in brief. Then there have been various MCA clarifications and FAQs which have come out on COVID, which are important, and you all should be aware, because I'll cite a couple of cases, very sort of typical questions we answer on a regular basis, although it's mentioned so clearly in these FAQs. And then we'll take up the Q&A, and I think right at the beginning of the session, for those of you who may have joined late, you can post your questions on the Q&A chat box. So we are going to take that up after my session, and then after even towards the end of the session when Madhulika has spoken. So I wanted to just put this slide, which is really a recap on section 135. And what I want to tell every participant out here is the audience, that really, if you ask me today, as the law stands, this is what is the law. There isn't really a change. These are a lot of these changes which we're talking about are all proposed. They are about to happen. So yes, as a company, you need to gear up, you need to plan how you're going to address those changes. But really, from a law perspective, this is what the law is, which is which has a specific applicability in terms of which are the companies basis their net worth, turnover, net profit criteria which get covered. There is a responsibility cast in terms of the board. There is a CSR committee responsibility. There is a requirement to try and give preference to your local areas. You are required to spend 2% of your average net profit before tax as per section 198. And as far as not spending, if you're not able to spend in any particular financial year, there is a responsibility which is cast on you as part of the director's report to report the reasons. If you fail to disclose, that's when the penal consequences could kick in. So that's really what, even as of today, the law is. Now I'm going to sort of touch upon the changes of the proposed amendments. And as we mentioned, there have been various legal committees. There was the latest was the Injati Srinivas committee, the MCA committee, which was set up, which was last year. In 2015 was the Bejol committee report. In between, there have been a couple of legal committees. I think taking sort of a cue from a lot of recommendations which were made, and also ignoring a lot of those recommendations, coming out with something totally new, is what we see in the form of the amendments which have come in the to the Companies Amendment Act 2019. So this, as you see, is the Companies Amendment Act. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, the way a law is passed, there is a process. I mean, first it's a bill, it's presented to the Lok Sabha, it gets passed, then it moves on to the Rajya Sabha, then it gets presidential assent, it becomes an act, it gets reported in the Gazette. Now, if you see, as far as the Companies Amendment Act 2019 is there is an there is a gazette also, gazette notification. The only thing is the date. Now within this Companies Amendment Act 2019, there were various amendments to various section. 135 was one of this. So it's been very clearly mentioned out there that for certain sections it will become effective only when it's the date of notification, when it's notified. So as of today, the section 135 amendments have not been notified, right? So having said that, let's just understand what really are the changes which are proposed. Which now, if somebody, I'm sure that's a question which is going to pop up, that do we know when this amendment is likely to sort of come up? Maybe I'll take that up later, but the clear answer is no. It was expected sometime in the last year, and then COVID has happened, so the government is busy with a whole lot of other important matters. But so that's where it is right now. So one of the amendments which is proposed in the Companies Amendment Act 2019 is that companies who have been in existence for less than 3 years. So under the current act, what happens is that the requirement is to spend an average of your 3 years, 2%, of the 3 years. Now, if a company has not been in existence for 3 years, what was noticed that a lot of companies were actually not spending, or just sort of taking a cue that, okay, I've not been in existence for 3 years. How can I calculate my average for 3 years? So, there were both kind of companies. There were some companies who were taking this argument, while there were others who were like, okay, irrespective of that, whatever I have, whichever years I was in existence, I'll go ahead and spend. So to really sort of stop these kind of differential treatments, one of the proposed amendments is that if you have been in existence for less than 3 years, then the average will be considered for the respective period of existence, which means if you were there for 2 years, so look at the average for 2 years. If only 1 year, then you take the 2% of that 1 year. So that's something more to sort of clarify and put to rest a lot of doubts. The second and very important aspect is that, and really why this has come in is, if you see when I showed time, penalties only seem to kick in once, only if you fail to disclose. So most companies were really disclosing. A lot of data showed that companies were still not spending, the 2%. So the government felt that the compliance really five-year period. So what the government has proposed as per the Companies Amendment Act is that if you have certain unspent CSR amount in a year, and in case of ongoing projects, now this ongoing project is something which is not defined in the act. This is something which is defined. We'll talk about it in the CSR amendment rules. So ongoing projects have basically been defined as multi-year projects which have a duration of not more than 3 years plus 1 year of the financial year in which the project is started. So maximum it can be is 4 years. So if you have certain ongoing projects, but you have still not spent, let's say your requirement to spend in a year was an X amount, you've not spent that amount, then you are required that you open an unspent CSR account. So escrow account is really not a terminology which has been used in the Companies Amendment Act, but that is what is the characterization. It's basically an unspent CSR account which the company will have to open, and these funds which they have not spent on these ongoing projects, they will need to transfer this to that unspent account and really not touch it for any other purpose. It has to be only utilized for these CSR projects, and these must be spent within 3 financial years. And in case there is a failure to spend it even within those 3 years, then there is a requirement to transfer these unspent funds to the National CSR Fund within 30 days from the completion of the 3rd financial year. So that's what is the requirement in case a company has an identified ongoing project. But they can be cases where a lot of companies literally, sit till March. They have no project identified, no implementation partner identified. So really in those cases you have an unspent balance, but no strategy or no project identified. So in those cases the government says, okay, don't worry, I mean, we are here. You are not doing much about it. So there is going to be a national CSR fund, which the government is going to, is it's in the process of getting that open. But till that doesn't open, you have clearly the Prime Minister Relief Fund, and of course now even the PM Care Fund is there. So any of these national funds, the requirement then is to transfer these funds within a period of 6 months after the expiry of the financial year. So basically 2 categories: it's an ongoing project, then you transfer it to your escrow account and make sure that you use it within 3 years. Otherwise you got to then, after 3 years, transfer it to the National CSR Fund. And if you're in a category where you don't have already a project identified, then you automatically, after the end of the financial year, within 6 months is because by September is when 30th September, every company needs to finalize their financials. Before you file your director's report or not, before that you will have transferred this to the National CSR Fund. So the crux of this really is that the government is sort of moving towards, either you comply or we will make sure that you comply. The other thing which is added in the company's amendment is a section which says that there's going to be a right to central government to give general or specific spend the unspent CSR funds in a particular manner to ensure compliance. So that's the whole. So this is what they've come out now. Maybe in future, once this law gets enacted, they feel this is also not working. So the government has enough teeth and power to, frame more sort of requirements for compliance. And there is also a clause in terms of penalty. Of course, the prosecution provisions have not talked because there's been really rolled back, and we'll see in the next slide as well. But what is really changed in terms of penalty is that while earlier the penalty was sitting in section 134, which really deals with various non-compliances with reporting and other aspects, here now they have moved the penalty to section 135 itself. So to say that, okay, if you don't spend, this is what the maximum penalty can be. And it's been good that they've rolled back the prosecution, because those were really harsh and there was a lot of hue and cry from the industry on that. So I think just to sort of reiterate and summarize, the effective date of above amendments is not yet notified. So it is not yet a law. But clearly the government's intention is to move towards a mandatory CSR spend. We now see, so in March, before really, COVID has hit us in a big way, I think on 18 March 2020, the proposed amendments to the CSR law, there were certain other additional amendments which were brought out, but this is still a bill. So it has only presented to the Lok Sabha, and, whenever the next session, possibly the monsoon session happens of the parliament, that's where it's going to get presented to the Rajya Sabha, and then it's it'll go through the process of becoming, and it's in a proposal stage. So the amendments which have been suggested in this is that one is in section 134. There was the penalty could really range from 50,000 to 25 lakhs. So there, in terms of not giving the reasons, now the penalty has been crystallized to say the penalty of 3 lakhs on the company, and every officer in default can be subject to a penalty of 50,000. So this is if you don't disclose the reasons. This is a good proposal to carry forward the excess CSR spend in 1 year to subsequent years, and the manner, of course, and how it is to be done, how many years, what is the system, that all, of course, needs to be prescribed. So you've been reading a lot of news articles saying that, CSR can be carried forward, you can spend, but this really is still a proposal, of course, with a certain catch. We'll, when we discuss on some of the tax benefits, we can cover that point. If there is any, so in terms of penalty, because there was a lot of hue and cry when the Companies Amendment Act 2019 came about prosecution and the fact that the penalties are too harsh. So in the amendment bill, they have tried to sort of crystallize or reduce the penalty, or at least give it a fixed sort of an amount to reduce the ambiguity. So the proposal is that default in compliance with either transfer to the National CSR Fund, which is in case of non-ongoing projects, or to the unspent CSR account or the escrow account, which is in case of ongoing projects, penalty will be least off. So it will be lower of either 1 crore or whatever was the unspent amount, double of that. So the least of these could be, you could be penalized to that extent. And every officer who could be in default could be penalized to a minimum of 1/10 of the unspent amount, or INR 2 lakhs. I think all of you would be aware that, penalties are something which end of the day are always discretionary. They are, people sort of try and contest or fight out, but that's what has been, at least amount wise, there has been more clarity proposed in these in the bill. Another important, rather a good move is that there are a lot of companies which are not that large, which may have a CSR obligation of only 50 lakhs. And the entire compliance burden becomes very huge for such companies to have a separate, CSR committee. And so the government feels that in case of such companies, the board should be enough to discharge the obligations. They need not set up a separate CSR committee. So let me just caveat it, because we may have some participants who are in that category. This is still not the law. This is just a proposal. So clearly there is a shift towards greater compliance and streamlining of penal consequences. So these are as far as the section 135 is concerned. Now, as far as the law is concerned, you have the BEAR Act, or the act which talks about really the, touches upon the requirements of various, sections or any changes, but to really operationalize, or the mechanics of how that happens is really defined in the CSR rules. So clearly, while 135 talked about, an ongoing project or an unspent account amount, how do you operationalize it? So that's where the government came out with the draft CSR, Companies Amendment Rules 2020. This came out in March, sometime, I think. Around 18th of March, it was put up for public comments, and the date, of course, kept shifting. I think the last date for public comments probably was 20th April. And as you heard, in the earlier session from Dr. Meena, BCCI and various organizations and individuals have posted or put up their comments, or greater clarifications are needed, because there are many new aspects which have been brought about in these rules. And some of the it's just not possible in this session to really go through each and every change, and maybe you could run through some of those even yourself, but the key amendments is what I want to touch upon here. So one very, very critical, and you would have read a lot of articles, there have been a whole lot of discussions in various forums on this, is so far how you would have all been doing your CSR activities. One could do a CSR activity either by the company itself, or you could use an implementation agency, which would be a Section 8 company, a trust, a society, or a government formed trust and society, formed by some of these legislations. What the draft CSR rules have done, they seem to have removed the category of trusts and societies, registered trusts and societies. So what the law now sort of seems to suggest is that CSR activities are to be undertaken by the company itself, or through a Section 8 company, or an entity which is established under an act of parliament or a state legislature. And there is also a new category of an international organization. But of course, if you use them, then it requires a prior government approval if you use it as a implementation agency. Now, international organization has been defined under the UN Act, and government can sort of specify any such organization, like UN is one, and there will be several others who are categorized as international organizations. So clearly, it was felt that maybe some international organizations bring in a certain amount of experience to the ground, and they should also be allowed to be part of this entire ecosystem. So I think some of the really critical issues which emerge from this is, if you really see historically, I mean, as India, we've had philanthropy has been we've been rich in doing a lot of philanthropic work, and a bulk of that work is really carried out by trusts and societies. Most CSR, in fact, I think the last Injeti Srinivas report pointed out that almost 43%, between 43 to 50% compliance was done through trusts and societies. So you really find very rarely that companies would be implementing programs completely, on their own. They partner very actively with the civil society, and most of these are trusts and societies. It's only in the last decade that we've seen a lot of Section 8 companies are set up, but on an absolute number wise, there are mostly trusts and societies. So there is going to be a huge sort of disruption in terms of how these activities could actually get done on the ground if trusts and societies are not included. So our understanding, I think most people were taken by surprise with this amendment. So there is a clear recommendation gone very strongly from all trusts and societies should also be included. I think one of the reasons possibly which one hears is that possibly MCA feels that maybe there are at times there could be certain avenues of misuse of funds or sort of like what you say, like a circular economy, or the funds could come back through usage of trusts and societies. Now I would say bad apples are there everywhere, but you can't sort of make this as a general general rule. So there was also a recommendation that all there should be a way that all the implementing agencies should register with the MCA. So if a company wants to use a CSR implementation partner, there is all implementation agencies need to register, which is a change which they have brought in. So one does hope that trusts and societies will be allowed to act as implementation partners, because this could also impact a lot of corporate foundations who could be set up as trusts and societies. The other change which is there in terms of the international organization is that not only for helping with the implementation, they could also help with designing, monitoring, evaluation of projects or programs, and also capacity building. So that's the new category of implementation agency which has been introduced. There is a mandatory, which I just mentioned, there's going to be a mandatory registration requirement by filing a form CSR1. So as part of the rules, this form is there, which asks usual details about the organization, their PAN number, GSTN number, who's the board, and all those specific details have been asked for. The interesting thing is it's not very clear at what stage the implementation agency should register. Should they register at the beginning of the year, somewhere in the middle, or before the end of the financial year? So I think that those clarifications have been sought. Interestingly, what they have also done, if you see in the erstwhile rules, any implementation agency, unless it was your own foundation, necessarily had to have a 3-year track record, which was essential because one didn't want really fly-by-night operator or somebody who didn't really have an experience of working in a particular sector or did not even exist for 3 years. But interestingly, the draft CSR amendment rules don't seem to mention about the 3-year track record, or maybe they feel that the law has now been around for 6 years, so most organizations, implementation agencies have been around, or they already have 3 years experience. That possibly could be one of the reasons. In the definition of CSR, so there is now a clear sort of definition of CSR. They've also tried to sort of streamline a lot of things were sitting in circulars, some in some FAQs. Some of those have been brought in while some have been left out. So there is, in the definition of CSR, they've introduced a new term of statutory obligation. So that again, a clarity has been sought that what is sort of the what do they really mean by statutory obligation. I think the understanding is that clearly it's to reiterate or reinforce that every company who is eligible is statutorily or within the law required to spend that 2%. And clearly there is, like as they mentioned about the fact that if there is an unspent amount, it can go to the National CSR Fund. So I think to aid all such actions, this term of statutory obligation has been brought within the definition itself. This is the next point, which is related to who can really be my beneficiaries. So earlier it has been very clear that any program which significantly benefits my employees could not really be considered as as a CSR. But now there has been a slight leeway, which I think is sort of trying to look at a more inclusive approach. That if any of my CSR activities, if they benefit not more than 25% an activity, for my employees, it can be considered as CSR. Now really whether 25% is referring to the number of beneficiaries, or is it going to be construed, because there is a possibility that this provision can be misused. You could be spending 1 crore and spending maybe 80% of your funds towards 25% of the employees and the balance towards the other beneficiaries. Clearly that may not be the intention. So those clarifications have been sought, whether this 25% is just in terms of the employees, or is it in terms of the spend as well. And also the word family is not mentioned, while I guess it should apply to employees and their family, but that clarification has been sought. Uh, so this point is quite interesting, because in terms of the utilization certificate, so what you find overall when you look at the CSR amendment rules is that there is a greater sort of role which is being carved out for the CFO. They're required to, in addition to the board looking at the utilization, the CFO is required to certify this utilization. Now, is it that every company gets their accounts audited? So is it like over and above that audit, it is required to certify? What is really going to be the role of the CSR committee in this? So this is a new point which has been introduced in the CSR rules. In fact, the disclosure requirements, which had a responsibility statement and one of the signatories was the chairman of the CSR committee, is not there now. Instead of that, it's the CFO or an equivalent person. So is the intention to reduce some of the role of the CSR committee, or to make sure that the overall sort of fiduciary role of the CFO is also brought into or enshrined within the law. So these clarifications have been sought. Some of the other changes is in terms of so as part of the CSR policy, the CSR committee is required to formulate an annual action plan, which is what Dr. Meena said in the beginning, that it's there is going to be a clear requirement in terms of not just that these are the you put your schedule 7, but clearly within that, which are the areas, how are you going to measure, what is the what is going to be my overall baseline, how am I going to do an impact assessment, what is going to be the role of the CSR committee. So it's a much more new terminology has been given, and also more sort of robust requirement in terms of an annual action plan to be formulated and recommended by the CSR committee to the board. Any surplus from CSR activity, as we mentioned, also has to be plowed back to the unspent CSR account. So what this says is that once this law becomes, or the new rules come into effect, it's possible that you have some unspent balance, which is lying surplus from earlier CSR activities, which is lying there, that needs to be also transferred to the unspent CSR account. This next aspect in terms of CSR assets is very interesting, and it's going to cause a lot of hardship. So the requirement is that any CSR assets which are created while you're doing CSR, while earlier it was allowed. I mean, company could do CSR, you could be running a school, and the law did not stop you from having the building and some of the infrastructure sitting in your books. But now what the rules seem to suggest is that CSR assets cannot be created in the books of the company. They must be created in the books of either the Section 8 or the public authority. So say if you are working with the Gram Panchayat, so let it sit in their books, or if you're working with a particular government authority, let it sit in the public authority's books, but it cannot sit in the company's books. So Section 8 company they have mentioned out here because at least as per the proposed rules, that's the only implementation agency which is currently allowed. So clearly if they bring back trust in society, the section also should automatically get amended. The other sort of hard-hitting aspect is the retrospective requirement. So one is that going forward, that you need to ensure that you don't create any asset in your books. The other requirement is that any assets which have been created earlier will also need to be transferred within a period of 6 months with additional 3-month flexibility. So in about 9 months it needs to be transferred to the Section 8. So there are a lot of sort of accounting and tax and other aspects which will play an important role, and may not be so easy to undertake this. There are additional disclosure details on the website of the company and in the annual CSR report, because this whole gamut of, each year, what is the unspent amount, what are the ongoing projects, what have you carried forward from the previous years. And like Dr. Meena said, there is a requirement in terms of mentioning how many times the committee has met during the year, what are the other roles they play. So they also want to look at competency. Like somewhere I remember reading the word competent in this draft CSR rules, like to suggest that you also need to look into probably the competency of the overall CSR committee. So there are a whole host of requirements which are brought in. This I've already mentioned, that there is a sort of a possible dilution in responsibility of the CSR committee, because they don't seem to be certifying that in the director's report. Impact assessment is going to be mandatory if an average CSR spend, for the last 3 years has been greater than or equal to 5 crores. So really, I mean, should this be in terms of the average spend? Should one look at a particular size of the company? So those are all questions which have been posed back to the MCA. Administrative overheads, as you are aware, there is a limit of 5%. But what the law has now seems to suggest, the proposal is that in case there is an impact assessment studies done, then these admin expenses overheads can be 10% instead of 5%. Now, the interesting aspect really is that impact assessment study is something which is really part of a project life cycle, and typically it is an essential ingredient of monitoring and evaluating my project. So to my mind, it really should not be even considered as an admin overhead. It's a critical part of project implementation and looking at the review or the monitoring of the project. So really, by making this 10%, ideally this impact assessment should be looked at as a part of project expense itself. This we've talked about. The National Unspent CSR Fund will be set up by the government under Schedule 7. But till that happens, we have you've got the Prime Minister Relief Fund, you've got the PM Care Fund, or any of these other central government set up funds where the unspent funds will need to be transferred. I think I am running a bit out of time, but I'll try and quickly wrap up the next 2 slides, and then I think we can deal with the questions. So these are some of the CSR amendments post COVID-19. One was clearly it was a notified disaster which the Ministry of Home Affairs and the various government ministries notified. So clearly the MCA then came out with a clarification and said that Schedule 7 needs to be interpreted liberally, but at the same time within healthcare, sanitation, disaster management, it's clearly covers an eligible CSR activity. Then the PM Care Fund was set up as a very specific focused fund to deal with this issue, so that any contributions to the PM Care Fund also qualify as CSR. There is a 100% deduction which is available on that. So there have been, because of COVID, there have been extension in various timelines under different statutes. So under the Income Tax Act, there is rather a sort of benefit which is extended to companies to say that if you make a contribution for CSR in financial year for pertaining to the financial year 1920, but you could technically make it till 30th June. So you could get an 80G benefit for financial year 1920. So you make the contribution even up to 30th June. So from the Companies Act perspective, it will be treated as a CSR expense of financial year 2021. But under income tax, you will get a 80G benefit, because you may be aware that now, depending on which tax regime your company is in, you could be in either a lower tax regime of 22% or a 15%, or you could be in the full tax regime of 30% plus taxes. So if you are in a lower tax regime, then ATG benefit is not available on any CSR, right? But if you are in the higher tax regime, then yes, ATG benefit is available. But due to the COVID and to encourage companies to spend on CSR, even the companies who are enjoying a lower tax regime, in case you contribute by up to 30th June, for CSRs to the PM Care Fund, or make any other donation, you could get an ATG deduction. So that's a benefit which has been provided. Then there have been very specific FAQs which have been posted, by MCA, which was really needed. A lot of points have been clarified, especially in respect of. And so there were a lot of questions which companies had, that the salaries, I mean, we are shut, our plants are shut, factories are shut, so can the salary which are paid to my employees, can that be considered as CSR? Yes, I mean, is that I don't really have the cash flows, but I still have to pay the salary. So the clear clarification which has come out is, as far as salaries are concerned, that's clearly an obligation of the company, and even though there is COVID, it's out of humanitarian reasons you have to. So whether it's to your employees, to your casual workers or temporary workers, any salaries paid is not CSR. Only if something is given over and above a salary, which could be an ex gratia payment, and that too which needs to be approved by a board, and then the auditor needs to certify, that can be considered as CSR. So I think these were really the key sort of amendments that we have seen related to COVID and other areas. And I think in view of the time, Usha, what do you suggest we should take up the questions?
There are already 2-3 questions in the Q&A.
Okay, sure. So I think we can take that, because it's already 3:38 as per my watch.
So we can take,
sure. I'll
two
just
questions, and then we'll Madhuli, go to Madhulika.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, what are the questions?
Meena ma'am, you are on mute.
The first question is how to compute average
So
net
questions,
profits.
yeah.
How to compute average net profits when the company incurs losses in one of the 3 years.
Yeah, so if the company is incurring in loss, so when you're taking an average, so the average has to be taken off the previous 3 years. So one of the years is a loss, 2 years is a profit. So you basically add the profit and reduce the loss, and that's what gives you the total, and you divide it by 3. So you need to look at the profit before tax, which is specified under section 198 for each of the years, and you will of course be having a loss in 1 year, and that's how you get the average. So it's possible that due to that loss, your ultimate net figure is a negative figure, in which case you don't spend. But if that's a positive figure, then you will be required to spend 2% of that. Yeah, we can go to the next question.
Yeah, next is who are the officers in penalty concern?
Officers in penalty concerned will be from a perspective of whoever, I mean, the company has sort of authorized as the key people for. So typically when you have any notices which are issued, it goes to all the 3 all the managing committee, the CSR committee members. It has been going to the the managing director. Now of course they have brought in the additional category of CFO as well. So clearly these will be the officers who could be considered in default. But I can certainly sort of very specifically looking at where within which section it is defined, I can come back on that question.
So the third question is what kind of CSR initiatives company can do in COVID other than donation of funds? Okay, so a couple of things that company may consider depending upon the need of the larger community you may consider. So if there is a need for activities related to healthcare, so you may undertake that. If there is a need related to creating livelihood support activities for rehabilitating people you may consider. So it depends upon what is the need of the community, and what are the skill sets and the resources that the company has to engage, and what type of CSR partners are you getting. Okay, so you'll have to have a synergy between these things. Say for example, if you're looking at social distancing, teaching on preventive healthcare, whether with COVID or without COVID, social distancing is required, or community sanitation is required. So you may go in for a preventive healthcare related things. So you will have to find out, and NGOs or your employee volunteers who would be interested to teach people about this, they getting into the preventive education domain. If you're into the educational domain, then you may consider doing some innovative projects in the areas of using IT for spreading the capacity building of teachers, say teachers training programs, upgrading their skill sets to conduct online. So you may consider those types. But again, without considering the community needs, taking up projects would not do good for any organization, because you have to see that it also creates a social impact.
Meena ma'am and Gurvinder ma'am, are you going to share your presentation with the participants?
Yeah, so that
Yes,
Usha will take a call on that. That's why I didn't read that question.
Yeah, we will share.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Madhulika ma'am, and meanwhile, if anybody has any other question, they can type it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Madhulika ma'am, over to you. You are on mute, ma'am.
Is that okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you all hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Aniha, Usha, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I have to say I've learned so much afresh after having had a lot to do with CSR over almost 25 years. But I've learned so much today from Dr. Meena Galiara's approach, as well as Gurvinder Parmar's articulation of everything that companies need to really look at. So there is a lot to relearn with the advent of changes and possible amendments that are going to come up. I want to actually begin also by saying thanks very much to Bombay Chamber of Commerce, and especially the CSR committee, of which I think Dr. Galiara is a co-chair, and Usha Maheshwari in particular for inviting me to join this webinar as a guest speaker. I feel really privileged and honored. Thank you very much. Folks, I've been asked to speak on employee engagement. Now, employee engagement, as the term itself suggests to me, it's a topic of myriad connotations and diverse interpretations. I personally believe that, actually speaking, it is just a good thing that it can be so diverse and interpreted widely, because that will then enable a democratic approach to engage the employees. In other words, let the employees also use their free will and their ideas on how they wish to engage. Now, having said that, the essential approach and meaning of this truly lies in fostering organizational commitment amongst employees, and that is very essential. So it is the organizational commitment that employee engagement as a whole really deals with. Yeah, it is these committed employees who show loyalty to become productive individuals in their organizations. Now, which organization is not going to want that to happen, right? They want every employee to be equally productive, and even more so than go beyond expectations. Now, speaking of employee commitment, therefore, to my mind is fully linked to understanding employee engagement. Employee engagement is understood and accepted to be one of the most important and significant concepts in organizational behavior, and a lot of research has been done on it. It has been brought, and all this research has really brought out a lot of factors related to that. It is regarded as a type of positive and satisfying work-related attitude, which makes the employee get involved and committed emotionally, physically, and intellectually, or you can say, emotionally, physically, and through the mind, intelligence. Some of the studies have even, as way back as 2002, have also said that employee engagement is very important to achieve useful business performance outcomes for different organizations. It was found that organizations with an engaged employee will have higher levels of customer satisfaction and customer loyalty, and that organization was more profitable than those who had less engaged employees. And as we fast forward to today, as the world is changing, the economic downturns that we have seen that started a couple of years ago, in fact, last year was very evident, and as if that was not enough, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken its toll on business organizations and our overall economy like never before. Unanticipated, never heard of, and unimaginable almost. So how are we going to proceed from here? Because what this has resulted in is a lot of business losses, a lot of companies not being sure to even exist, and how are they going to be there, and greater expectations of their performance as well as their social responsibility. So there's a whole conundrum of issues to deal with. So how are we going to proceed from here as we start to rejig our priorities, and I mean corporate priorities here, to survive and grow in the new world order? To my mind, it will have to be through committed employees. The committed employees, as I mentioned before, will be those who have been engaged with the organization emotionally, physically, and intelligently. So it would not be presumptuous, really, to say that employee engagement will emerge as a critical organizational issue. Sure, so how are organizations to approach or take a strong relook internally? I would be remiss if I did not bring up a critical and recent development as an outcome of the pandemic and the resultant lockdowns. Reductions in force or laying off of employees. This has been all over the media, and a lot of us know about all the companies where this has been necessitated. Now, there are clearly some residual and resultant issues that will challenge employee engagement. I just want to briefly touch upon a couple of points here. In organizational restructuring with downsizing, technological innovations will have to be brought up for serving differently, and delayering of departments, delayering of employee structures are, of course, the immediate crisis response strategies that the firms will need to take and have been taking already. So that was point number one, just to bear in mind and keep this in the back of your mind when thinking about what we're going to do. Two, while it may be necessitated due to financial constraints, I read in a study that downsizing and laying off of people has detrimental impact on the firms, causing something new which I heard of. I hadn't heard of this term before. It's called survivor syndrome. Employee disengagement comes up and reduction of morale, trust in the employer, and a terrible sense of loss of job security. Now, these aspects need only common sense to figure out how this can affect employee performance and the organizational performance, its stability and its growth. We're at this juncture where we've got to rebuild ourselves in many cases, at least definitely coming back to the same level, even in the biggest organizations. Now, this is an aspect I will really leave with you all to think about and keep it as an open for discussion subject internally within your own organizations. This brings me to refer to a Gallup report which said Employee engagement is a powerful weapon in business, one that only the most successful leaders know how to wield. I would clearly think that employee engagement has to be a coordinated effort in an organization. I feel the coordination needs to be at the very minimum between the top leadership, HR, and here's where I see an additional and critical role for CSR leadership and teams to come in. So the third aspect of the collaboration is from the CSR role. So a tripartite process, a tripartite agreement between these three critical manager support groups. One way to foster engagement is through sustainability, or let's call it, at some places it already is being integrated with corporate social responsibility and vice versa. But this is a big area of fostering engagement. CSR can make it go beyond just social responsibility as we have known it traditionally, or as it is written down under acts and under schedules. But you can look at it, you can have a broader approach and yet align it, right? So make it go beyond a day with an NGO as a volunteer, which is what we have been doing. And it's been, I started at things like that in 1999, way before the act or anything like that. And, so a day with an NGO as a volunteer, or offering volunteer time off, or saying, okay, we will match your grants, etc. In fact, today, that kind of traditional method of employee engagement in CSR is going to be a bit of a challenge, especially due to social distancing. And I mean, even though lockdowns may be lifted by the government, fact of the matter is the majority of the people will need to maintain certain disciplines to carry forward their tasks and come to work and their own. So, I mean, so this will have to be kept in mind, and probably a challenge. It will therefore mean that you could look for employee engagement, at integrating the company's mission and purpose with sustainable values, supporting environmental and social goals in ways that these can connect with your business. We have always found that CSR can be directly linked to employee retention, productivity, and overall engagement. I mean, I remember a little story on the side. There was a senior executive in an organization, a very large MNC, who used to do and participate in a lot of volunteer programs. In one of them, the family was also involved and invited to attend. The daughter tells the mother that, "Mom, I'm so happy with this company, please never leave it." So that's a huge, and that stayed in my mind. I mean, I think this is something I heard some 12, 15 years ago, that this kind of commitment and contribution that people can get opportunities for, right? So it can be directly linked to employee retention. I mean, there's no way that family is going to think of her leaving the company. Productivity and overall engagement. Increasingly in the recent years, it was found that millennials now regard business as a force for positive social impact. There's no doubt that when companies help the world, they help themselves. So to leave you with my thoughts, CSR teams can really add immense value by amplifying your CSR programs to help retain and attract talented employees who want to do good in the world as well as doing good on their jobs. So folks, collaboration, at least between CSR, HR, and the top leadership, would probably be a necessary way forward. And I will leave just 4 things how to go ahead. I'll engage with HR, engage with employees, educate employees on CSR, and get engagement from them, facilitate their ownership of any project. And here I'll mention what Dr. Meena Galiara came up with, was various things that you would look at. Maybe your employees can engage in developing a lot of those. Anyway, since my time is up, there's just one point that I do want to mention here, is align your engagement with work priorities. It can no longer be something else that an employee does to feel good. So with that, I will close and thank you very much for your patience in hearing me out. And I sincerely hope some of my thoughts have resonated with you. If ever you wish to have a more detailed dialogue, I'll be happy to make myself available. And you can always get in touch with me through Usha Maheshwari, Hania Ranjan, or indeed Dr. Galiara, the Bombay Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much. Back to Usha.
Yeah. Thank you, Madhumata. Thank you so much, Madhulika. Now we have one more question, which I think will be very useful for the participants also. There's one question that if we work with the migrant laborers and we appoint them, I mean, we hire them to do work, will they be, what payment to them, will it be charged as CSR expense or?
I think I started typing that answer. So I think the question really one will have to see is when you're engaging the migrant laborers, what is it? I mean, if you're employing them in your factory and you're saying that, I've that's really it's like you're going to give them salary. Yes, it's a good thing you've engaged, but if it is something which they're really not part of my ecosystem, they don't have anything to do with my business, but I have gone ahead and engaged with them on different aspects, that's clearly CSR. So if the question is that I have really put them in my factory, then that will not be CSR. Salary paid to them in that case won't be CSR.
Okay. Okay. So this was the and there was
I think Dr. Meena is saying something. Meena, you're on mute.
Can I upload that FAQ circular, because in that I think the questions which the participants have.
Yeah, I have that.
Getting, yeah, so it's here.
Okay, you're uploading. Sure, do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so this is the FAQ, okay, which is there, which actually puts these questions in terms of what you can do with your CSR contribution. So here is this, whether payment to is allowed or it is not. I'll just increase the size so that you all can read it and just zoom it a little bit. So here it is.
So it is there on the website.
It's there. So I think this circular. So this is the circular which you should go through when you're looking at. So this will clarify the legal position on it. Okay, so this is what you will have to take care of it, and if you do not agree with it, then I think you will have to take the legal course and challenge the things, So if companies come together to do that, they are free to do. But this is what, as of now, the legal position is on the particular migrant workers, whether you can pay them or you cannot pay them. Okay. So should I stop the sharing? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Meena. I would also like, Meena has already shared her presentation. Participants are asking for the presentation. Gurvinder, will you be able to share the presentation?
Yes. And Usha, there were a couple of other questions.
Yeah, a couple of other questions are there.
Were there? I think there was one which I had answered a few online, but I think I missed at least.
Yeah. So there's a question on from Lena, that in response to COVID-19 pandemic, companies have generously contributed to PM's fund for PPEs, food packets. Probably they've exhausted their CSR fund. Now, how the companies will manage on their ongoing CSR projects? Is there any direction from MCA? Okay, so Gurvinder, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So Lena, hi. I mean, unfortunately, no, there isn't really any directive from MCA. In fact, this question I'm asked so often, and it's by a lot of companies where they're saying that, we are really not going to have the cash flows, in this year. If I look at 2021, so do I really have to spend? So I'll tell you what the legal aspect is. So if I have to look at my CSR spend requirement for financial year 2021, I really have to look at the eligibility criteria for the financial year 1920. and the spend has to be calculated of the previous 3 years average. So from that perspective, if you really see, I will have a 2% eligibility or a spend requirement. The only thing is, if I don't have, because I have channelized towards other areas, there is no clarity from MCA, but I do know quite a few companies who are actively sort of thinking that maybe we'll just, give a reason to say that, we are unable to spend. But right now we are really in May. So it's also in some sense little, early days to see practically how a lot of people are going to, tackle this aspect.
Okay. So there is
Usha,
we've already
Yeah,
crossed
so there is one more question. How employee volunteerism will help or connect in the present situation of losses in business short of fund for CSR projects? So Madhulika, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take the question, but I need to understand the connection between in Felina, employee volunteerism. How can it help connect when it's short of fund for CSR projects? I don't understand the connection between funds and the employee volunteerism part. If you could re-ask your question, Lena.
So Madhulika, I can clarify. I think what Lena is trying to
Yeah.
say, that the company doesn't actually have the hard funds, but it is, its employees are devoting their time and energy. So, can there be sort of a monetary aspect placed to that for, and considered as CSR? So what Madhulika, you can add to that from an employee engagement perspective, from a Companies Act perspective, Lena. Unfortunately, the way the law is, it doesn't, it says any sort of employee time or volunteering is not really considered as a CSR. So you can't put like a monetary value, per
Proxy
se to
value.
that.
Yeah,
Yes,
proxy
so
value.
that's not allowed, at least under the current regime. But that's a very good point. I mean, whether MCA would want to come out with some clarifications, it's hard to say.
In fact, what I would like to add to that really is that, see, given the fact that today's scenario is what it is, and even going forward for a while, the fact is that employees will not be able to probably engage and indulge in volunteerism the way we did previously. Things like you go and spend a day with Habitat, or you build homes, you do a community service as your volunteer thing, or you're in school, you're doing education, you're doing mentoring. I think some of those things are probably going to have to be kept on hold for a while, because simply, social distancing and this is going to be a reality. It's going to continue for a while. That's my view. But from a legal perspective, you are absolutely, you know it better than anybody exactly how it will be viewed. But in terms of funds, maybe there could be a monetization of their timing. But I think, Usha, this is where Bombay Chamber can come into the picture, because industry chambers, along with some of the companies, can actually petition to say, can we please try and monetize the hours that our team and employee people are spending, or even their own payroll giving. For example, if they are giving their own from their payroll contribution, we also match that and include that into CSR. But it's a petition to be made, because as you rightly said, Gurvinder, it doesn't currently exist as part of CSR. So Lena, I hope that helped answer your question, what Gurvinder said in terms of reality and what I said in terms of suggestion.
Okay. Dear panel members, Dr. Meena, Gurvinder, and Madhulika, thank you so much, both of you. I'm hurrying up a bit because we have another webinar at 4:30. So my other team is waiting for us to clear this line. So last thing, thank you all of you. It was really very insightful. A lot of new policy updates we all received, Gurvinder, and the perspective which Meena had framework was put in was really great. So all three of you you all have given us a lot of inputs and thought and take forward, in our own organization, how do we take it forward, our CSR activities. So thank you once again to all of you. Thank you all the delegates. But